Alcatraz, 1946. The bell always came first. It echoed through the cold corridors, bouncing off stone, metal, and men. Then came the shuffle of feet, hundreds of them, boots scraping the floor in unison, marching not to music, but to hunger. I can almost hear it, the rhythm of obedience, 200 trays clattering in the same beat, the smell of steam, soap, and soup mixing in the air. No one spoke, not in the halls, not in the yard, and certainly not in the mess hall. For 4 long years, the rule was silence, a warden's experiment in control. And yet, amid the punishment, Alcatraz fed its men better than any prison in America. That was the strange mercy of the rock. The food was good, the silence absolute.
When Alcatraz opened in 1934, the government promised the nation that no one would ever escape again. An island turned into a cage, surrounded by the icy water of San Francisco Bay. By 1937, it already had a nickname, Uncle Sam's Devil's Island. Only 275 prisoners lived there at a time, but each was the kind the country feared most. Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, the Birdman of Alcatraz, a man famous for caring for birds. But here, he wasn't allowed to keep a single one. The man in charge was Warden James Saltwater Johnston, hard as the tides around the island. He believed discipline wasn't just punishment, it was order, balance, and routine. He banned speech, but made sure the food never ran out. He said bad meals made bad men, and if the food was good, then even the worst of them might stay quiet. At Alcatraz, each inmate had 4 rights: clothing, shelter, medical care, and food. Only food, the warden said, would be generous. It was his philosophy of peace by fullness. The mess hall became the heart of that order. It was where discipline was served hot 3 times a day.
I once saw the menu from a Monday in September 1946. It read like something from a family restaurant: split pea soup, roast shoulder of pork with sage dressing, mashed potatoes, stewed corn, apple pie, bread and coffee with milk. For men behind bars, it was a small piece of dignity, a meal that didn't taste like punishment. The guards ate the same food. That was the rule. It was equality by necessity, and it kept the peace more than any weapon could. They filed into the mess hall, 10 at a table, 5 facing 5, a guard at each end, eyes fixed. 20 minutes to eat, not a second more. Each tray had to return with its knife, fork and spoon, laid in perfect order. If one piece was missing, no one left. Some called the hole the gas chamber. Hidden in the ceiling were 14 canisters of tear gas, wired to explode at the pull of a switch. And outside the door, guards waited with Thompson submachine guns, ready to bring silence back the loud way. Most days there was no need. Men chewed, swallowed, and stared at their plates. The sound of spoons became the sound of peace. Not everyone on the rock lived in that rhythm. 10% of the inmates worked in the kitchen. That was the golden job, the closest thing to privilege that Alcatraz ever offered. There, men handled real knives, touched sugar and salt, and breathed the warmth of stoves. They could shower every day, a luxury most of the island couldn't afford. One of them was Alvin Creepy Carpis, once public enemy number 1. He became a cook in 1943, baking small pastries for himself and his friends, and brewing what they called prison wine from stolen yeast and bits of fruit. In 1945, they caught him wandering the yard, drunk on his own brew, but they didn't stop him from cooking. Maybe even the guards understood. The kitchen was the one place where men still felt human. I picture that scene. Flour dust hanging in the air, the smell of bread rising above the clang of steel, a man stirring soup while watching the fog roll past the barred window. For a moment, he wasn't a number. He was just a cook.
By the 1950s, the menus of Alcatraz had changed. The food didn't change much, but the words did. Supervisors learned that names could soften discipline, so they printed menus with gentle, tempting phrases: June peas, milk-fed veal, homemade coleslaw, even chilled tomato juice. The goal was not kindness, it was control. To make the food sound pleasant, to make the day feel normal. And it worked. Men ate, men obeyed. Men waited for the next meal because routine was safer than rebellion. Still, peace in a place like Alcatraz was fragile. One bad plate could undo months of calm. In 1950, it happened, the spaghetti riot. Each week, the noodles grew worse, the sauce thinner, until one man said, "If this comes again, we flip the tables." The next week, it came again. What followed was chaos in slow motion. Tables slammed, cups shattered, coffee splashed like mud in a storm. And then came the sound every man feared, the metallic click of a weapon's safety being released. A guard shouted, "Blow your whistle!" And just like that, the riot ended. Men sat back down, as quiet as lambs before slaughter. No one died that day, but the story spread fast. From then on, the spaghetti got a little better. For those who broke the rules, the silence grew heavier. Solitary confinement, a place where even food was stripped of comfort. Breakfast, half a bowl of cereal and milk. Dinner, half a bowl of soup and 4 slices of bread. Supper, the same again. 3 meals every day. Enough to live, never enough to feel alive. Only once a year, on Thanksgiving, did mercy slip through the bars. A full meal for every man, pumpkin pie included. Even those in solitary tasted it. Alcatraz had ended corporal punishment. No lashes, no cold hoses. The body was safe, the spirit was not. Some said the food itself became the new weapon. Meals so heavy and constant that men grew slow, tired, obedient. 5,000 calories a day and nowhere to spend them. No riot starts on a full stomach. Everything that reached the rock came by boat. Every bag of flour, every crate of apples, every drop of water. The sea took its toll. It cost 3 times more to keep a man fed at Alcatraz than anywhere else in the country. For years, they called it the most expensive prison in the world. In 1963, the government finally stopped paying. After 29 years, the last tray was cleared, the last spoon counted, and the rock went quiet for good. The empty mess hall sat above the bay, its windows fogged with salt, its ovens cold. The silence returned, but this time it stayed. I've read what some of the men later said. The food, one recalled, was as good as a restaurant that specialized in home-cooked meals. It's a strange thing how a prison became known for good food, how the same meal could mean kindness and control, comfort and punishment. The warden's theory held true. Bad food breeds rebellion. Good food breeds obedience. And on the rock, obedience was survival. I wonder what it felt like, sitting at that table, under the eyes of armed guards, steam rising from the soup, knowing that a spoon too slow or a glance too long could bring the tear gas down. I wonder if they savored the taste of apple pie, or if sweetness only reminded them of what they'd lost. I think about that sometimes, what it must have felt like. The sound, the silence, the order. In my mind, the rock still lives in that moment. At noon, the bell rang again. The men lined up, trays in hand. They moved through the line. Soup, pork, potatoes, corn, pie. Each ladle a measure of routine. They sat. They ate. They listened to the sound of chewing and clinking metal. For 20 minutes, the prison was quiet, and the world beyond the water seemed far away. In that moment, each man had what the warden promised: food, warmth, and a fragile kind of peace. No chains could be broken there, but for those 20 minutes, the hunger was gone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to remind them they were still human.